This war was never about pride or headlines. It was a gamble for survival. Now the mask is gone. One man believed he could freeze the battlefield with a handshake. Instead, he stepped into a trap decades in the making. Moscow never sought peace. It sought time, and today, that illusion has shattered as economic firepower strikes directly at the heart of Russia's lifeline.
Trump has been trying to force the Russians into a peace deal. It's not going to happen. The Russians see the war in Ukraine as the start of a broader geopolitical offensive that they need in order to survive through the century, the right. Basically, it's a border issue and a demographic issue. They didn't do the Ukraine war on a whim. They didn't do it to satisfy someone's ego. They did it because they think they needed to survive. Anyway, Trump is attempting to put a stop to the conflict. And so the Russians have been stringing him along, making him look like a fool, and then going back on everything they agree on. Anyway, Trump has had enough of it, apparently. And today, Trump put sanctions on two largest oil companies in the country. One of them is Rosneft, which is the state-owned monopoly, or near monopoly. And the other one is Lukoil, which is technically a private firm, but takes its cues from the government. Full sanctions, which basically means that any American national cannot do business with any of these companies. The impact in the United States is going to be limited to Lukoil at the moment. Lukoil has a number of gas stations, service stations throughout the country, about 150, and supplies crude and gasoline to the U.S. market in a limited way. Rosneft is different. Rosneft does all of its business in Russia. It's not a particularly sophisticated company. It just happens to be large, and it's absorbed pretty much all of the activity in the former Soviet Union that it could.
What Zeihan lays bare is chilling. Moscow does not see Ukraine as a conflict to be managed, but as a necessity to be enforced. Demographics, geography, and long-term decline cornered Russia into a position where aggression became state policy. Diplomacy was never meant to resolve anything. It was theater, used to stall, distract, and deceive while the war machine kept moving. That is why the sanctions strike was never symbolic. It targeted the financial arteries, sustaining the strategy. What Peter Zeihan exposed was not a battlefield mistake, but strategic lie, a Kremlin addicted to deception, selling fantasy as facts simply to survive another day. But lies do not collapse in press briefings or conference rooms. They collapse on the battlefield. And nowhere has that collapse been more brutal, humiliating, or final than in Kupiansk, where Russia did not merely lose ground, but lost its soldiers, its credibility, and its grip on reality. On December 16th, Moscow declared victory. Kupiansk, officials claimed, had fallen. The fighting was over. The city was theirs. That statement was not just false. It was obscene, because as Russian authorities announced triumph, Russian soldiers inside the city were already trapped, hunted, and being erased. The war had not ended. It had turned into an execution. Days before that announcement, the truth was obvious to anyone paying attention. Kupiansk, a key city in Kharkiv Oblast, was not collapsing under Russian pressure. It was being methodically reclaimed by Ukraine. By December 12th, reports describe a reality that directly contradicted Kremlin claims. Ukrainian forces had surrounded the remaining Russian units and were eliminating them block by block. This was not chaos. This was not desperation. This was design. At the center of it was a ruthless concept distilled into three deadly words: search and strike. By early December, the situation for Russian troops inside Kupiansk had become critical. Months earlier, in September, the threat of a Russian breakthrough had appeared real. Moscow believed it could grind forward slowly and later manufacture a victory narrative. Ukraine saw the danger and built a trap. A specialized formation was assembled for one purpose only: hunt down every Russian soldier in Kupiansk and destroy them. Multiple brigades and regiments were fused into a single killing force, including the 13th Khartia Brigade, the 92nd Assault Brigade, the 475th Assault Regiment, elements of the 144th Mechanized Brigade, and fighters from Ukraine's Military Intelligence Foreign Legion. This was not a defensive grouping. It was a manhunt. The heavy reliance on Khartia units was deliberate. Khartia represented a clean break from rigid, outdated Soviet-style warfare. Built by volunteer fighters and supported by private resources, it embraced modern combat: drones, decentralized command, Western training, and relentless adaptation. Months earlier, its fighters had already proven the model worked, launching surprise assaults that wiped out Russian positions with minimal Ukrainian losses. Kupiansk became their proving ground. Between October and November, the trap began to close. Russian assault units advanced and vanished. Entire formations were shredded. Units from Russia's 121st and 122nd Motorized Rifle Regiments were destroyed, along with elements of the 68th Motorized Rifle Division, the 30th Engineer Regiment, and the 27th Motorized Rifle Brigade. Russian drone support failed to change the outcome. One by one, soldiers walked into kill zones they never saw coming. Then came the decisive move. Ukrainian forces broke through north of Kupiansk and secured control near the Oskil River. That single achievement sealed Russia's fate inside the city. Every ground route was cut. No reinforcements, no ammunition, no food, no evacuation. Any Russian forces that had already crossed the river were on their own. And they were not enough. With supply lines severed, Ukrainian units began systematically erasing what remained. The 13th Kartia Brigade liberated Radkivka and cleared the surrounding forests. In northern Kupiansk, Russian troops who had infiltrated residential areas found themselves isolated inside dozens of houses, surrounded and abandoned. Elsewhere, Ukrainian forces advanced with the same precision. The 475th Assault Regiment liberated Kindershivka and nearby Woodland, while battalions from a 92nd Brigade blocked any attempt to break the encirclement. Between late September and December 12th, Kartia units alone killed more than 1,000 Russian soldiers. And still Moscow lied. Inside Kupiansk proper, additional Ukrainian formations worked block by block. Entire districts were cleared. High-rise buildings used by Russian troops as firing positions were destroyed, collapsing inward and burying the invaders inside. There were no escape corridors, no negotiated surrenders, only rubble and silence. All of this happened before Russia claimed victory. By December 17th, one day after Moscow's announcement, Ukraine revealed it had retaken nearly the entire city. Ukraine's top military commander publicly dismissed Russia's claims, confirming that Ukrainian forces controlled almost 90% of Kupiansk. The operation, he said, succeeded through relentless search and strike actions. By early January, only fragments of Russian resistance remained. Isolated pockets, fewer than 100 soldiers total, surrounded, starving, and cut off even from air resupply. Ukrainian forces could see and strike every drop point. The last symbol Russia clung to was the city council building. A single structure used to pretend the city was still under Kremlin control. That illusion collapsed on January 13th. Ukrainian forces stormed the building, reclaimed it, and raised their flag above it. The proof was undeniable. Video footage showed Ukrainian troops advancing to the streets, coordinating with command centers, deploying drones with lethal precision, and flushing out the final defenders. The image of the Ukrainian flag snapping in the wind above the council building annihilated Russia's narrative. Kupiansk was not captured. It was liberated. Some fighting lingered in contested areas, and small Russian groups remained trapped in isolated zones. But they were finished. Their fate was sealed unless Russia could somehow reopen supply routes. Something has failed to do, and yet Moscow keeps pushing. Russian forces on the outskirts continue launching assaults, trying to claw back momentum. Kupiansk remains a prize because of its rail hub, its logistics, and its role in supporting operations deeper into Donbass and the Kharkiv region. But the reality is stark. Russia no longer advances here. It bleeds. Kupiansk exposes the core truth of this war. Russia lies to survive. Ukraine fights to win. And in Kupiansk, those lies were buried, along with the soldiers sent to defend them.